Hello and welcome to our episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today I am absolutely delighted to be joined in the studio with Tom from Caplin. Tom, how are you?
Hi, very well, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Listen, lovely to have you in here. We've done a little preamble beforehand, exciting times for you in the business.
Yeah.
Lots to catch up on, lots to talk about. But before we do that, Tom, give us a bit of an intro to yourself and the business.
Yeah, of course. So, Tom Darvall, I'm Managing Director at Caplin Systems. Caplin provides trading applications for banks. We started around the year 2000 with a very high performance, low latency data streaming product that was picked up by a lot of the tier one banks, predominantly in FX for streaming ticking rates across the internet. Those are the days of dial-up modems, so a lot slower, so that'd be a very high performant piece of kit.
You forget just how far everything's come at that sort of stage.
Come along, mate.
Yeah.
And the tier one banks were using that to then stream those rates into browsers and into other trading applications. So pretty soon we got into the business of having solved the problem of how to stream the data, how do we represent that in a browser? And Caplin were responsible for making some of the first web-based single dealer platforms. We've been on that journey ever since, really. So today we have a number of applications aimed at banking clients, so corporates, institutionals, high net worth individuals, but also internal sales staff, trading staff, back office staff at the banks as well. And all of our applications are focused really on using intuitive workflow and design to make sure that the trading experience is as efficient and as productive as possible.
We mentioned it sort of briefly there at the start. There's a lot of movement that's happened in this sort of space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movement happening in every single stage, and it doesn't feel like it's slowing down at any sort of stage. And if anything, we're moving at a rate of change that we haven't seen at any sort of stage before. One could argue, even going back to the electronification of the markets, for the first time. So that creates a lot of opportunity. I know you guys have been speaking a lot about the sort of FS sales desk and a number of different trends that have been happening around there. So talk to me about some of the broad shifts we're seeing there and what's happening and where you guys fit into that story as well.
Yeah, so the main shift from our perspective is the move from voice trading to e-trading. That's been catalysed to some extent by a few things. Regulation, so things like MiFID II, recent changes to the global code, and their requirements around price transparency, price construction, and having that kind of digitally recorded and audit trailed, really made sure that the days of voice sales and writing things on bits of paper are gone. Secondly, cost. So FX margins effectively is a race to zero now. So any kind of manual touch point that you have along that way when doing a trade with a client is going to add cost to that trade. So the more you can automate it, then obviously the better your profitability is going to be on that trade. And then finally, obviously, just a cultural shift towards digitization. I think both the clients of banks, but the staff as well, expect to be dealing with a digitally capable bank, and much in the same way that people don't go into branches as much and like to retail bank on their phone. The same is true in capital markets. People would prefer to transact themselves digitally if possible.
I think it's such an interesting part, and when it comes back down to, I guess this sort of user experience of that, the ability to have that digital experience you expect in your everyday life that you see in your day job. Yeah. The expectations rise and rise and rise about that, how quickly that happens. Yeah. And look, there's great opportunities in productivity for that, because the thing that struck me about what you were saying there is that obviously we're having increasing margin pressure about as being as efficient as possible, as reducing costs as much as possible.
Yeah.
But I say quite a lot on this show that there's only so much cost cutting that you can get to without improving the other side of it, which is improving people's productivity. Exactly. So if you've got these increasing costs, the only thing you can do is to continue to make sure that everyone is as productive as possible. I guess that's where you guys got into stage left, right? Yeah,
so I think the way that banks are doing that is pushing as much flow as possible to self-service. So low value, low touch stuff that doesn't really need a salesperson involved, that can be served by the single dealer platform. I think the recognition that the experience of the salesperson is an area that the bank should invest in terms of time and money and technology in order to make their job more efficient, is something that we've been seeing the last 5 years, especially. And there's productivity gains to be seen from that. So I can think of a project that we did recently where the bank had a team of about 20 sales staff globally, and they assessed that they could save an hour and a half per day per salesperson just by moving the client information, the pricing information into one place, tailoring that screen and that UI to their workflow, and really just, making it more efficient for them to book and price trades, so that they could then spend their time, that hour and a half extra each day, which over 20 people over a year is a lot of time. Spend that on more value-add activities. So solution sales, for example, relationship building, whatever the bank thinks that they want those salespeople to invest in, then that time is freed up.
I think it's so, I could get really geeky about all of this, because I've spent years and years talking about exactly that subject, about how you can be so much more productive with your time and increase the efficiency of everyone who you're dealing with. And I think that to me is the golden ticket about how we can move further forward in the time there with the pressures that we've got, and with the global productivity crisis. If we engage properly with the right technology and engage properly in the development of people's skills, that's a really exciting double act as to where things can go, and makes people so much better. So coming back to that sort of the whole structural challenges around FX franchises at the moment. You're obviously right at the heartbeat of it. You're getting the word on the street. I always like the idea of the shoe shine guys in the 1920s films who hear what's going on. The detectives go to it. So if you're the detective in this sort of story, or the shoe shine guy, I'm the detective. Tell me a little bit about what people have been most vocal about in 25.
Well, I mean, I think there's still a lot of silos at banks, so data silos, technology silos, business silos, and I think that is something that impedes change still to this day. So if we talk about data and technology side of things, one of the ideas around moving the sales desk in particular into the future is using things like AI, machine learning, to look at the holistic view of client activity, trading across product, across asset, make recommendations, so that desk could be more profitable. But you're not going to be able to do that if your data isn't in one place and cleaned up and trustworthy. It's the same with different systems being able to talk to each other, integrate with each other. But I think probably that's all driven by the fact that there are business unit silos at banks that still exist. Again, I can think of a project we did with a bank in the US. There was a cross-border payments project. So you had the treasury team at the bank and you had the FX team at the bank, and both of them delivered two sets of requirements, which were largely quite different. So one of the things we did was go in and go back to basics and say, okay, well, what outcome do we want from this project? How are we going to measure it? What are your current pain points, etc.? And it turned out what they actually wanted was to unify the client experience. So currently the client was going to do some FX in one system, completely one different look and feel, and then going to make the payment once they've done the FX in another system. Now clearly that's not a very productive use of a client's time, and probably not a very productive use of the bank's time as well. So the project ended up being this unification layer where, regardless of the systems in the background, at least from the client's perspective, there was a seamless experience. And I think really for me the onus is on the vendors to take this approach with banks. Banks are banks. They're not software delivery experts necessarily all the time, and it is difficult to gather lots of requirements and to turn that into a project. So vendors going in and taking the bank through the fundamental questions. Well, what outcomes are we trying to get from the project? Where are your current pain points? Where are the bottlenecks? How are we going to measure success? Starting from there, then going on to, let's host some user workshops and really look at the journey and how we can tweak it and improve it. Those are the things that as software vendors we really need to guide the banks through.
I think that's really important, and I see those sort of partnerships as becoming increasingly important as things go through as well, because it leads quite nicely into this sort of narrative that we're seeing of buy and build, buy versus build, depending on which way you want to look at it. And there's been an awful lot of chatter about that over recent years. It's definitely evolved again, and this whole thing of, look, we're proprietary, we're going to keep our toys. This is or having a vendor who's got an enterprise system that says, right, like it or leave it. This is how we do it. You've got to fit this into your system.
Yeah.
That was always the issue. Right now, I feel there's a really exciting opportunity where there's so much more collaboration and interoperability around systems, and collaboration and partnerships that are going on between banks and the businesses, and banks evolving their mindset from saying, right, this is all secret, I'm not going to share my toys, you can't come into the It makes it a really interesting sort of shift. So from where you're sat on that whole, very straightforward buy versus build to potentially a buy and build sort of world that we live in at the moment. Yeah. So what's the shift look like to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you use the word partnership, and I think that's a key word. But again, I think the onus is on the vendor probably to demonstrate the value that they can add to a bank. If you think about reasons why traditionally banks have chosen to build rather than buy, possibly they've had bad experiences before with vendors, but I think the main reason is control, being in control of the project, which, for these trading applications, it's a minimum 5-year install. It's going to be there for 5 years, possibly more. Otherwise, it gets very expensive and very disruptive to swap that in and out. And if you think about the person who's buying the software or choosing which software to use, they're probably taking a fair amount of career risk on their decision and on the execution of it and how successful it is. So they're going to want to retain that element of control. I think the way to deal with that as a vendor is to, as we said, put yourself less as a vendor and more as a technology partner. So you're bringing expertise to the table. B, we're going to work on a long-term basis with that bank to ensure that our roadmaps stay aligned and the technology moves with the business. But B, that technology and that offering has to give the bank some element of control. If they want to make changes, they're going to want to be able to do that in the system and not necessarily reliant on a delivery from a vendor. And I think they're going to want those changes quickly. One of the things that we hear from the front office a lot is about time to value. So we request a feature, how long till I can get it? And if it's 6-12 months, that's too long. So really, I think the technology needs to support that. One of the things we're looking at is clean extension points so that our customers can add customizations on their own bat if they want, but without affecting the upgrade path. We work a lot as well via account management and customer success functions to make sure that we're looking 2 years ahead with all our clients, what's upcoming on the roadmap, and making sure that's fed back into the product. I think that's really important, and if you don't provide it, then unfortunately the product stays behind the business, and the bank can't realise the value quick enough.
I think you're absolutely on point with that. It's whenever I think of failed relationships on that vendor end user sort of place, I think it's usually that the sale gets done and there's not the thought process and the partnership that comes there afterwards, and that ability to sort of adapt the product so that, as it evolves, and to make sure it's worked, and to I guess to speak on it in an agile terminology, to win the hearts and minds alongside it, and to get people evangelizing around that product and really thinking about how it can grow and develop within it, because when it's done properly, it should do exactly that. So we've spoken about this all the way through, but productivity is at the kernel of everything you're looking to do when you're investing into to improve the sales performance in a business. And I think it's so important to look at that. But it's really interesting in any industry, I think, to see what actually good looks like. How do you benchmark it? How do you measure it? One person's good is another person's terrible, another person's terrible is another person's outstanding. It's really interesting to see where it sits and shapes. So if you're thinking about measuring sales desk productivity and saying this is where we want to go and this is what's good, should you be looking outside? Should you be looking in? Should you be looking around? How do you know what good looks like?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably look at that from a few different lenses. I think ultimately probably good means profitable. for the bank. I think that's what they're looking at, and we're back to this idea that a salesperson just being a pricer and a booker of trades is not productive, not profitable. So you need to look at ways you can add value, and in terms of, I guess, shortening the length of the administration tasks, we put in quite a few things just in terms of workflow. So recently we've developed a text-to-ticket trading, for example. So literally just writing in the client name, the currency pair, the direction, and the amount will populate the ticket, bring it up, and it's a matter of a few keystrokes and a click to book that trade. But then what are they going to do with the extra time, that hour and a half extra a day that I spoke about earlier? Then you can start doing interesting things like having a decision support module. So using the client trading data, assuming you've got that, to inform, well, what next? So this client's rung up and he's asked for this FX trade. What other products, what other asset classes can I sell? So then what that also leads to is having a system which can support multiple asset classes, not just FX. So again, we're seeing a lot of demand for money markets, commodities products, all to come into that same workspace, same look and feel, so that the sales guys can do more than just price and book FX trades. They can offer value in different products.
Yeah, and that's exactly where you want people to be. This is so important, I think, and it's we are. If you think of the evolution of sales, full stop, in this whole space. And that goes, I guess, for vendors as much as any other space. So if we're talking about the sales desks in FX, there's been such an evolution of how business is done and what people. And I always love this move from buyer beware to seller beware, with much more informed people who are buying, making sure you have to be that much more informed. You have to be better. And I think the only way to really get people to move on that sort of journey is to probably hire in a slightly different mode of salesperson, but B, alongside that, arm that salesperson with the right sort of ability to be as knowledgeable and as productive as possible in that sort of space. And when you're buying that time, when you're winning that time, that allows people to improve themselves and be hyper productive at the same sort of stage. So I absolutely agree with you in it. I don't think I've had an episode of FinTech Focus TV this year where AI hasn't come up on the menu at some sort of stage, and it's definitely headline grabbing. I mean, there's all sorts of buzzwords that have gone through from it. There's various different levels of hype. There are certain things where I'm not 100% sure that AI is the right word to be used within the process of what we're looking at. And there's people there who are obviously doing some great things, but I've also had a number of different conversations recently, which I'm finding really fascinating, around the whole subject of innovation. One episode we did recently where someone said there's been no innovation in fintech for many years, and it's evolution.
Okay.
And people sort of seeing innovation as the sort of dirty word that pivot was beforehand. A couple of the pre-COVID word. If you were pivoting, you were failing, and you'd had the wrong strategy at the start of it. That's sort of evolved where I think people are pivoting because the acceleration of tech a lot more, and it's become a lot more of a cool word to be using. But if we're going back and thinking about AI as a headline, and if we're thinking about genuine innovation in the space, where do you sit in that debate?
We look at it as technologists. We're using innovation to support the bank in terms of how they can roll out and consume software and get that time to value that I spoke about. We've been on a journey the last 5 years to kind of re-architect how we're delivering our software components. So we're moving towards a model where all of our software components are individual modules or widgets, so building blocks, if you like. Banks can then take those building blocks, create their own application with it, put those building blocks into other applications, and then crucially, if they want to take a new feature or an upgrade, they just have to take the upgrade of that individual component rather than the whole application. So what this allows them to do is A, reconfigure their own workspaces and their own trading applications, B, consume features a lot quicker. They can be developed quickly, they can be tested quickly, and they can be rolled out into production more quickly. So again, listening to that front office complaint that we don't see the value quick enough, trying to address that and using innovative architectures to do that.
And actually, you mentioned an interesting thing there about we launched this company 15 years ago. There's a lot of conversation about the race to zero latency, and I had another episode recently where we were talking about the move from speed to quality.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where we're looking now, isn't it? It's like, what can we get, whether you want to talk about quality as productivity or where you want to sit with it, it's very much a journey there to say, right, with everything we're doing at the moment, how do we make it as successful as possible? How can we make it as good as possible? And that's where, innovate. What sort of angles can we look at differently to increase the productivity or efficiency of everything we're talking about? Yeah. So let's move on to that and talk about people who are listening to this, who are tasked with modernising their sales tech. They're sat there and they're looking to get as strong as possible, to improve things as much as possible, to make it as easy as possible for their teams to do it. Where would you be guiding them? What sort of points would you be suggesting?
Yeah, I think my main piece of advice would be to take a lesson from the cross-border payments example that I gave earlier. So don't just collect a load of requirements on a spreadsheet from all the various stakeholders and leave it at that. You have to think about, where do you want your business to go? What outcome are you trying to get? Is it profitability? Is it client experience? Is it speed? Is it quality? And build back from there. Again, I think you should probably, and I would say this, but you should probably employ a reputable vendor to help through that process, because it is a bit of an art form. But look at the business as a whole, look at the pain points, look at the bottlenecks, look at what you want to get out of it and how you're going to measure it, and involve the user. I think a lot of the times when we do our project, a lot of functional requirements come in. We need to be able to trade these types of products in this way, but especially on the sales desk, there's lots of diversity into how people do their jobs in different regions, on different desks.
Even different characters as well.
Their jobs. That's probably not going to change for a reason. It's very difficult to get people to do things differently. Yeah. So let's look at what they are doing, why they're doing it, and let's adapt the technology, assuming that that's the best way they should be doing it. Let's adapt the technology to that. So lots of user workshops, mapping out different personas. These are all the things that any reputable vendor should be able to guide you through in the process, and you should be looking out for.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, that, isn't it? When you've got the buy-in, I've seen so many examples of fanfare of a great piece of technology that's brought in that's going to change the world. Yeah. But actually it's been a top-down decision without the sort of consulting with the people who are underneath it. You need the
buy-in from everyone.
Exactly, and when you've got people there who are champions and evangelists, and as you say, look, it's meat and drink to the right vendors to be able to to go through that journey. Yeah. But it's so often the case of where it falls down, and I think getting that bit right is absolute common sense, but very much not common practice sometimes in terms of how people are doing it. Let's revert back to Caplin. It's been a really interesting year for you guys in various different stages. Yeah. Things going, from what I understand, particularly well at the moment. Lots of exciting things happening, a lot of change and evolution at the same sort of stage. So what can we expect to see? What does the rest of 2025 look like and beyond? What are you excited about?
In 2025, we're actually we're on a bit of a diversification journey at the moment. So we're traditionally very strong in FX, but as I said, lots of demand coming in for the wider FIC products in our applications. So moving out into fixed income, money markets products, for example, also commodities. But also another currency, digital assets, is something we're getting more and more demand from as well. It trades pretty much just like FX as well, so quite an easy shift for us to be exploring in that space. But interesting new market, lots of controversy in there, but also, without a doubt, digital assets and the blockchain that they sit on is something that I think is here to stay and start getting institutional adoption, governmental adoption as well. So definitely something that we want to be involved in, and something that's exciting. And then on the architecture side, really our vision, probably over the next 5 years, is to move towards something more like an app store. So the vision would be that you can log in, choose the features and components that you want as a bank, rearrange them how you want, add some customizations on top, and then if you want to take upgrades, you just log back into the App Store, click a button and download and upgrade it. That's the kind of ease of experience that we want our technology to provide. Again, there's a lot of work to get there, and lots of thinking and talking to our clients about it. But that's the direction we're heading, and I'm quite excited for that world.
You mentioned it at the very start, didn't you, about the sort of ease of use, ease of experience, and I do think that that's something there which is becoming increasingly important in the whole process. I look at what the golden threads are of some of the companies that are doing the most exciting things that I speak to on this show or we speak to in our day job. And I think it's really been laser focused on the value that's being added through what we're talking about. And that could be, I am a business that's absolutely focused on productivity gain. I'm a business that's focused on efficiency. Yeah. I want to reduce friction and create a better customer experience. I want to reduce cost. I want to increase speed, all of these different things. But I think realistically, when you've got something there that can nudge it forward in every single one of those areas and be specific and trusted, which goes back to the whole buy and build thing that we're talking about, that if you can have something there where people are able to buy and build and they're embedded into the business and they're understanding and this is a journey they've been on, they can create that trust and tailor it and bespoke it to what people are talking about. That to me becomes a really interesting and an opportunistic sort of place, and I love the fact that you're in that digital asset space, because it's been a sort of constant theme of this show over many years, and we've seen the sort of roller coaster undulation of the digital asset space. But you said something really prevalent, which I think is, look, it's here to stay. And as you said, as institutions and governments are now thoroughly throwing their hat in the ring into it all, and it's become less of the sort of Wild West DeFi world, bringing the TradFi sort of mentality into the whole thing has created some really, really interesting and opportunistic sort of things out there at the moment, and great to see you guys at the start of it all. In final words, tell us a little bit about who should be speaking to you guys at Caplin at the moment, and what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, any global or regional bank who is looking to increase their efficiency on trading desks, sales desks, provide better experience for their clients in terms of trading any FIC products, give us a call. They can get in contact via sales@caplin.com or via our website, www.caplin.com.
Fantastic. Listen, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you very soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.